I'm here in Shelton Park today. This is the first neighborhood that my family lived in Auburn. We moved in here about 12 years ago. And specifically, we are over on the right is Hollins Road. That's the street that I lived on. My family lived there. And then over my left shoulder is Bruce Court. So it's kind of an intersection here of two streets. And we're here today because I want to talk to you about small groups and about outward focus. So just to recap, our small groups are guided by 6 principles. And they are becoming like Jesus, that we're open and not closed, that we're linked together in community to look outward, that we're equipping, that we're developing new leaders and current leaders through ongoing coaching, and that we're multiplying. And what that means is that as groups grow and leaders develop, that we're growing from 1 group to 2 or more. So last year we really embraced the principle of being open and not closed. We saw a lot of people throughout the year that had interest in groups that were welcome to visit and join and be ongoing parts of groups. People who were members of Cornerstone, people who just visited, and a lot of people who probably will never come to Cornerstone have been able to be a part of our groups in the past year. And so this year, my challenge to our groups is to do the same thing with the principle of outward focus. And what I mean by outward focus is that we are loving our neighbors and loving our communities. And probably a good mental picture of what I'm talking about is if you pictured a group of people circled together, instead of being in a circle and facing each other, if they had their backs to each other and their arms were linked together and they were looking outside of the group, it would be something I call faces turned out. We're looking at the world outside of us, but we're linked together to love our neighbors, love our communities. So the first way this happens is loving our neighbors. And that's really why we're here today. We moved into this neighborhood about 12 years ago. It was great, and over time we got to meet a lot of new people. And actually, that's what I want to talk to you about 2 particular families that we met. And over my left shoulder, there's a house here at Bruce Court. My friends Clarence and Barbara live there, and Clarence's little girl Mason. And then over on Hollins Road where we lived, we had some friends that lived across the street, Kevin and Stacy. And just over the years, we did a lot of things together. It started out with our daughters, with Clarence and Barbara, their daughter Mason, playing with my daughter Lindsay. And it kind of developed from there. Barbara and I would go for walks together. And during that time, Barbara really started to share with me. She knew I went to church. She knew, a little bit about that and had met some friends, and just shared with me that, she could never go to church. She and Clarence lived together, and she felt she'd never be accepted in church, and so that was why she wouldn't never go. And then Kevin and Stacy were in a little bit different place. Stacy actually went to Cornerstone long before I ever did, but Kevin really was not somebody that God was really an interest for him in his life. And so, but we did a lot of things together with them, and a lot of projects like building sheds, fences, decks, laying sod, all that great stuff that you have to do when you're a homeowner. So we did those things together, and just over time, our friendship developed in that way. So 2 very different things, but still, it's just really neat, and that's what I wanted to share with you about them, is what God did with those relationships. So Barbara and I did a lot of walking together, and like I mentioned, she kind of shared one of the reasons why she didn't want to go to church. She also just spent a lot of time talking with me about faith and about God, and just about loving people in the church. So while all of that was going on, at the same time, David and I, we had a small group that met at our house, and we did a lot of things, cookouts, parties, grilling out, ping pong, you name it. We had a lot of people in and out of our house, and people from our small group and people from this neighborhood and other friends. And what began to happen is that Clarence and Barbara and Kevin and Stacy came to know our friends and our small group friends, not as a small group function, but just as a rhythm of life that we had, of just meeting the people that we spent time with and just doing life together. And so we even got to the point where we had a softball team together. It was a real mixture of people, neighbors, these neighbors, some of their friends, some of our small group friends, and even some vet students, just a real mixture of people. But what really happened was, like with Clarence and Barbara, was that they felt the comfort and the ease to be able to be accepted and loved, and to ask questions about God without worrying about what somebody was going to think about them. And it was really neat to see that by the time that Clarence and Barbara had moved away, that they made steps themselves toward God, And I'll never forget the day that Barbara and I were walking together, and she just said to me, you know, what you have, like I realize now, is God, and it's God's love in your life. And I see that differently than I did before, and I want that for myself, and I'm not really sure how to do that. And so it was a really neat thing to kind of see over the course of about a couple years of how just that relationship and that friendship and these people that were coming in and out of their lives, to just to love them and to do it in a way that they could ask questions and seek God themselves without the pressure of what people thought, and to respond to God. Okay, so Kevin and Stacy's a little bit different. With them, it really wasn't for a few years later after they moved away that we really understood or we were able to see the impact of those relationships in their lives. Kevin and Stacy found out they weren't able to have children of their own and decided to go through the adoption process. And part of that for them was for them to reflect on people who'd been important in their lives, and just to think about their relationship with God. And so we got a letter one day from Kevin, and in that letter it just said that probably that we didn't know, but when we all lived here, that Kevin was a place where he really didn't have an interest in God. It wasn't something that was important to him, and that he and Stacy were actually going through some hard times in their marriage, and that now, having walked through some of the struggles of the infertility and understanding they aren't going to be able to have their own children, that it had kind of pushed him in the direction of seeking God and asking questions and wanting to have that comfort in his life. And so here he is at this step, and he's reflecting on, I guess, places where God has met him in his life. And he said, you know, our time together was definitely one of those places that he didn't know it then, but in those friendships that he experienced here, that he knew now that that was God's love that he was experiencing through those people, that he felt safe, that he felt loved and accepted, he didn't feel like a project, and how impactful that had been to him to be open at this point in his life, to be able to seek God in this time of struggle for himself. So loving our neighbors means the people that God puts in our path. You know, it may be people in your neighborhood or on your street. It may be your coworkers. It may be the people, the parents of the kids your kids play sports with. It's just the people that are part of your daily life. And so for you and me, that may be different. The timing, the effect, the result of our involvement may be different, but the call to love our neighbors is just the same. All right, and finally, outward focus is loving our communities. I really want to challenge our small groups this year to love our communities, to serve together once a month. This is something we've not done before. We've encouraged it, but I want to challenge you together to do that. Can you imagine the effect in this community of 30-some small groups serving on a monthly basis in different capacities, Auburn, Opelika, Lee County, for all of us to be out there doing this on a regular basis. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to talk about it in your group. I'd like you to pray together and consider maybe where are those places that God has maybe drawn your heart, maybe the heart of your group toward a particular thing. It may be something like the food bank, you know, for food crisis and food needs. It could be something like domestic violence, but your group also may not have like that one thing that you all just kind of rally around. And what I want to say is that's all right. I still want you to do. Pray about it, talk about it, but then go ahead and make some real steps to decide to serve together in different capacities. We also have something coming up in October that's called My Jerusalem. We've been a part of this before, just kind of informally with small groups. But this time in October, Cornerstone is going to be a host for this event where we basically go out in the community and we're helping in different projects like home cleanup, construction, and things like that. And what we really want to see is our small groups this year just take a real step of making a commitment to serve together, to kind of really be the anchor point for that. So that's something else you could do. Another thing is our foster care initiative. You've heard a lot about that in the last several months. And as we move into the fall, we're going to have more families that are actually being certified through the GPS classes. We may have foster families that have needs. We want to see our small groups be an important part of rallying around those families to provide for needs like maybe a meal, maybe taking a child to a doctor's appointment, maybe helping out with the yard or just going and buying some groceries. So that's another place that we could serve. And finally, we're going to kind of unofficially adopt Auburn Junior High School as a place that we can serve together to just do some different things around the grounds and the building, and so that's also a place that we'll let you know when those needs come up, and that's a place for us as small groups to serve together. So there are many ways that we can be outward focused, that we can love our communities and love our neighbors. I just want to challenge you as you start off your small groups this year, that this be a real focus and a real priority for you, that at the very beginning that you talk about how can we do this and what would that look like for us, that you start out making plans of how you're going to serve together and have this be an anchor point of your small group. So again, pray, talk about it, and then do. The Cornerstone Small Groups, loving our neighbors, loving our communities, we are outward focused.